It was your mission and your triumph, and assuredly, you walked with us on the lunar surface.
The appearance of Colonel Edwin E. Aldrin, the first Union man to work on the moon, highlighted the 8th Constitutional Convention of the AFL-CIO in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Aldrin came to that convention to thank Union members for their work, their support, which made it possible for the first man from Earth to land on the moon and return safely. This is how it looked and how it sounded.
So I'm delighted to present to this convention, representing 14 million American working men and women, the first Union man on the moon, Colonel Edwin E. Aldrin, Jr.
President Meany, Secretary-Treasurer Kirkland, President Floyd Smith of my union, the IAM, Assistant Secretary of Labor, Mr. Usry, Mr. Seemiller, members of the Brotherhood of Unions, the Union of Workers joined in the American Federation of Labor, and the Congress of Industrial Organizations. It's indeed a pleasure for me to be here in New Jersey, my home state, and to be with you at this convention. I'm very glad that the IAM has continued my membership. But I will have to say it's been quite a while since I've had my card punched. I have managed to keep rather busy, though, and I'd like to show you a film that shows something of the kind of work I've been doing as a union man. Some of the tasks, you will note, involve the use of hand tools, mechanical equipment, for which skilled craftsmen have a special appreciation. One of the Mercury astronauts observed as he was climbing into his spacecraft, looking around at the many, many parts upon which his life relied, he had the thought, all this that I see upon which my life belongs has come from the lowest bidder. Now, this is hardly a comforting thought at first, but this sort of thing does not disturb us. It's largely because he, as many of us have, toured all the manufacturing centers and industrial plants involved in the space program. On these tours, we've seen men and women of America's labor force at work in the vital components of machinery and vehicles that carried us into space. Men and women who have a tradition of quality work and who have never played false with that tradition for any consideration. The union label means reliability, responsibility. The assurance of high quality, and we know that. We want you to know how deeply grateful we are for all of your support, the support both of your labor and of your tax dollars that provided us with the complex machinery and equipment that assured the safety and successful completion of our mission. This mission was yours and mine, as well as Neil Armstrong's and Mike Collins. It was your mission and your triumph, and assuredly, you walked with us on the lunar surface. You left your footprints as we did on the desolate lunar surface, just as you have supplied us with the confidence in your transportation with its life support systems that carried us every mile of our journey to the moon and returned us safely back to Earth. As Neil and I stood on the moon, the Earth was very much with us. We were wrapped in and sustained by an artificial Earth environment, which we carried on our backs. We are still literally earthbound in these very early years of the space age. Earth remains both our source and our sustenance. We take it with us wherever we go. And with this new perspective, this deeper appreciation of Earth, we have opened up the future to a new promise of attainment. Viewed from space, we have seen the Earth in all its opalescent beauty, the crowning jewel of our solar system. We have seen our home as a storehouse, rich in as yet untapped treasures. We've gained more knowledge and a better understanding of our good Earth. 3 of us took a journey to the moon, but more than 20,000 contractors, well over 400,000 workers encompassing a wide range of skills, trades, and services took part in the effort to get us there. Thousands of these very important people are members of unions represented by you here today. These include my own union, the International Association of Machinists, the Aerospace Workers Union, Communication Workers of America, the United Steelworkers of America, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, International Union of Electrical, Radio, and Machine Workers, Transport Workers, the Pattern Makers League of North America, all the metal trade unions as well as building trades, the American Federation of Technical Engineers, and the American Federation of Government Employees. The $24 billion invested in our lunar mission was both widely and wisely spent. More than 90% of it went to you and remained here on Earth, except for a camera, a few jettisonable portions of our spacecraft, some experiments that are giving us today information, and of course the descent stage of the lunar module that we left on the moon. Our dollars for space not only were spent on Earth, but according to a recent survey, our NASA civilian space program has, in its first decade, generated $35 billion in goods and services. Space exploration channels the creative and productive energies of our people at home and abroad, tends to increase this bounty and productivity and keep our labor force active. We must remember that the Earth is only an 8,000-mile diameter body in an 8 billion-mile diameter solar system. A solar system we have just begun to explore. Among the concepts you can expect to see projected from the drawing board to actual development in the industries which you labor and out into space is a space station that will be the basic element of manned activities in Earth orbit, of continued manned exploration of the moon, and which will serve as the training laboratories to prepare man for extended expeditions to the planets. A permanent structure in permanent orbit, the space station will support 6 to 12 occupants who could and would be replaced at regular intervals. Such a station may be working in space by 1976. Initially, the station will operate in a low-altitude inclined orbit. Other stations ultimately will be established in polar and synchronous orbit. And this module would also be used in lunar orbit to provide a station from which manned expeditions can explore the lunar surface. As you can see, man's first step on the moon, in truth, was only a beginning, a small step toward that great leap that can be made by all mankind, and that, in fact, which we began making when we entered the exploration of space as a national objective. The impact of space has changed us all. It has changed our nation. That change has been both good and productive for all mankind. Thank you.
Colonel Aldrin, words cannot express the deep appreciation that I'm sure we all feel at the great honor that you have paid the American trade union movement by visiting us here this morning and telling us not only of what you experienced in going to the moon, but letting us in on the possibilities of further developments of Earth stations, Earth orbiting stations, and all sorts of devices to explore the outer space. And I stress this all, not for the purpose of dominating and controlling or conquering any other people, but all for peaceful purposes, for the benefit of all mankind. We feel a tremendous sense of pride in the achievement of Apollo 11 and of the program that brought it to fruition, because it demonstrates American skill, American ingenuity, American resourcefulness, and above all, American determination. On this occasion, Colonel, we'd like to show our appreciation not only to the astronauts, but we'd like to show our appreciation to those courageous ladies who are waiting at home very anxiously for your return. And we've arranged to send to your wife, to the wife of Lieutenant Colonel Collins, and to Mrs. Armstrong, a full set of Lenox china, the finest china made in America, made by Operative Potter's Local Number 2, and we'd like to show you a sample of it. This is just a sample, and we'll see to it that Mrs. Aldrin and Mrs. Armstrong and Mrs. Collins, in a very short time, gets a full, complete dinner set of this china as an expression of our appreciation to the tremendous work their husbands done for the country, and also for our feelings for them, knowing full well of the many anxious moments they had in this flight. Thank you very, very much.
President Meany, you are indeed most thoughtful in thinking of those who were behind us. There were so many people behind us, we very often feel guilty that maybe some of the recognition just goes to that tradition of America and desiring to select someone upon whom they can bestow many of these honors. We accept this type of a gift on behalf of all of those that have been with us, been working in this program. As a small token from those people, I would like to present a picture to the American Federation of Labor, Congress of Industrial Organizations. The inscription on the photograph, a space-age workman stands proudly by his workbench at Tranquility Base.
are many places we could begin the story of an Apollo Saturn V lunar mission. Perhaps one of the best is when the 36-story tall space vehicle moves out of its huge assembly building and heads for the launch pad. Once at the pad, night and day, checkout and testing go on until the final countdown starts in the launch control room. The countdown continues until the 5 engines of the first stage ignite. Within seconds, the engines reach full power. The vehicle makes its first motion. The ground service arms swing clear. At this point, about 6 million pounds are being moved straight up by sheer brute force. To provide this force, the 5 engines are gulping fuel at a fantastic rate, a rate that would drain the fuel tanks of 15 DC-8s in 1 minute. As it flies, the rocket is guided by a very busy onboard computer. During the entire flight, it will make several million calculations that provide the guidance commands that keep the space vehicle on the proper course. These scenes were taken by a camera mounted on a tracking airplane. The engine exhaust plume is spreading out because the rocket is now about 40 miles up in very thin air. Very soon, the bottom stage will drain its fuel tanks and the engines will shut off, triggering a series of events leading to the separation and ignition of the second stage. This is a close view of the first stage falling away, taken by a camera mounted on the second stage. Liquid hydrogen is the fuel for this stage and burns much cleaner than the high-grade kerosene used by the first stage. This is why you cannot see flames even though the engines are burning. Next, the ring that connects the 2 stages falls off. In the bottom of the picture, clouds cover part of the Florida coast. Cape Kennedy is about in the middle. Although the next few events are out of camera range, they will be similar to what you have already seen. The second stage will drain its fuel, drop away, and the third stage engine will ignite and boost the space vehicle into Earth orbit. There, the flight crew and ground controllers check out the vehicle for the final leg of its journey to the moon. After the checkout is successfully completed, the third stage engine is fired and the vehicle leaves its Earth orbit outbound for the moon. As the vehicle reaches the speed high enough for it to coast to the moon, the engine is shut off. A short time later, the 3-part Apollo spacecraft makes its first independent movement. The command module, which is the astronaut's cockpit and living quarters, and the service module, which contains the main engine and the fuel tanks for the spacecraft, move out as a single unit from the space vehicle, turn around, go back to the vehicle, and link up with the lunar module, which is the shuttle bus for taking the astronauts down to the moon's surface. The complete spacecraft then pulls away from the third stage and continues its journey to the moon. During the 3 days of their outbound trip to the moon, the astronauts are busy checking the performance and condition of their spacecraft, going into the lunar module and preparing it for its job as a shuttle to the moon's surface and back, and navigating their spacecraft. Upon reaching the vicinity of the moon, the spacecraft is slowed down by firing its main engine. This allows the moon's gravity to pull the craft into orbit around the moon. After completely checking out the lunar module again, 2 of the astronauts ride it down to the moon's surface, leaving the 3rd astronaut to circle the moon in the Apollo. The touchdown on the lunar surface is very gentle. The craft's downward speed is about 3 feet per second, slower than most of us walk. On the moon's surface, the astronauts will perform various scientific investigations to add to our rapidly expanding body of information about the Earth, the moon, our solar system, and the universe itself. These include observation, photography, gathering samples of lunar soil and rock, and setting up scientific instruments to send information to scientists on Earth after the astronauts have gone. Upon completing their mission, the astronauts blast off the moon using the bottom part of the lunar module as the launch pad. Rejoin the other astronaut who has been circling the moon in the Apollo command module, and leaving an empty lunar module in lunar orbit, return to Earth. This typical Apollo Saturn V lunar mission that you have just seen represents only a beginning. For in the years ahead, NASA will continue the exploration of space for the benefit of mankind. Projects for this include Earth-orbiting space stations and reusable space shuttles. Remember, just as with Apollo, the success of all future space projects will be the result of careful handling at every point, from manufacturing plant to the launch pad.